Hello and welcome to the Figge Art Museum's virtual Thursdays at the Figge program series. My name is Melissa Moore and I'm Director of Education at the Figge, and we are very happy you could join us here tonight for this exciting program. For the immediate future, we're hosting these virtual Thursday programs most weeks, so please check the Figge's website for up-to-date program information and registration options. So you know, next week we will hear from photographer Cara Romero, whose work is featured in the exhibition Magnetic West, The Enduring Allure of the American West. The program will start at 6:30 p.m. and just like this week, after you register online, you'll receive a link to join the program of the day the program is scheduled. We're able to offer these Thursday programs at no cost to you thanks to the generous sponsorship provided by Chris and Mary Rayburn. Chris and Mary, for that we are so grateful. Thank you. Two quick museum updates. We are still recommending the visitors who want to visit the museum check out the timed visitor sessions online and reserve a spot. This is going to ensure that you have as much time as possible to enjoy the galleries, since the sessions are limited and we clean the museum in between each one. The second is that our cafe is reopening next week, and we really hope to see you there. It'll be open from 11 until 2, Tuesday through Saturday. And for those of you who have joined us before the cafe closed because of the pandemic, you'll note that we have added Saturday as an extra day. So again, we hope to see you there. And actually, I guess I lied. I have 3 quick updates about the museum. So the third one is that I regret to bring you the unfortunate news that our beautiful elevator is undergoing some repairs, and it's going to be out of service for a little while. So for up-to-date information on when that'll be up and running fully again, please visit our website. That's going to give you the most recent information or current information as we have it. All right, so then 2 things about the program tonight. Since this program is hosted in a webinar format, you can type a question that you have for the presenters into the Q&A box or into the chat at any time during the presentation, and we will address them during the Q&A portion of tonight's program. So don't worry about waiting until the very end. You can just type them in, and as soon as it makes sense for us to get those up and going, we will make sure to address them. And then if you would prefer to ask your question directly, please use the raise your hand function. And you're going to find that if you go to participants, there's an option down there for you to raise your hand. What you can do is we'll see that your hand has been raised, and then we will be able to, at the right time, we'll be able to give you the option to unmute your microphone and ask your question or make a comment. Just so you know, we will not be able to see you at all, but we will be able to hear your voice, and I know that the presenters always appreciate that. So those are a few different ways that you can ask questions during or after the presentation. I also did want to mention to you that we are recording this session for archival purposes. All right, so at this time, it is my great pleasure to turn things over to Andrew Wallace, the Figge's Director of Collections and Exhibitions and the Curator of Magnetic West, who will be introducing the program this evening. Andrew, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Melissa, for your wonderful introduction, and thank you, George Rodriguez, for flying all the way from Southern California to join us in Davenport, Iowa tonight. For those of you who don't know, we had intended to have George and another Angelino photographer join us for an opening ceremony for the opening of the exhibition Magnetic West, but unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we were unable to do that. Which is really sad, but at least we have this opportunity to share essentially more of George's wonderful photographs and learn more about his life. It's something that we probably don't hear a lot about, which is life in Los Angeles, particularly in the 60s, 70s, and 80s when George, and 90s when George was chasing down photographs of celebrities and life in LA. One of the things I think that people forget is that human beings are as much a part of the landscape as mountains or rivers or streets. So in this sense, for those of you who might be confused that we don't have wonderful landscapes filling our gallery, and instead we have other images of people sort of living their lives, and whether they're in protest or just walking down the street, that is all a part of the Western landscape. So we really want to be able to embrace all that, and having a photographer like George Rodriguez really enables us to do that. I will say that George was one of the first photographers we reached out to when we started to assemble this exhibition. I don't know if it was 2 years ago that Vanessa Sage, the assistant curator of Magnetic West, discovered George and tracked him down. And I'm not quite sure how she was able to do that. We had seen his images online and we were really excited about them. We knew of other Angelina photographers who we were interested in, but George's, well, the extent of George's work was really appealing to us, and it sort of embraced some of the themes that we see in the exhibition. One of the things that is important to, or everybody I should say, remembers about Los Angeles and California in particular is that's where Hollywood is, and our sort of feeling or understanding or impressions of the West largely come from Hollywood films, and whether that's Beverly Hills Cop or it's a Western starring John Wayne, Hollywood is really an important factor in how we feel and think about the American West. Whether that's a truth or a fiction depends upon what the subject is, but certainly it is an important part of how we understand this important and significant part of the American landscape. George is, as people who may have read the brief bio on our website, George has been practicing photography for over almost 60 years. And he will discuss his life and in particular some of the wonderful photographs he's made over the course of his career. And there's a lot here, and we're only going to show about maybe 28 photographs, but they're so rich and so varied, and they cover many of the topics that the exhibition cover, that I think people who are attending tonight, and we're very happy that you're here, will get a sense of the significance of George's work and its beauty. So beginning with this, we're going to begin with a slideshow, and George is going to talk about himself, and we'll begin with this first slide, which is the title slide, which shows George and Cesar Chavez posing. And I have to say that the portrait of George is really cool, and you look at him and you say, gosh, I want to know that guy. That guy's pretty cool. And I think that his work expresses his coolness. So with that, I'll turn it over to George. And George, if you want to chime in, and I think it would be good for people to start at the beginning. So you start in high school, and you find photography.
I was lucky in that. Well, actually, I lived in South Central LA, and there was a high school there, Fremont High School, that had a vocational photography course. And for a high school, it was incredible because they turned out so many fine photojournalists. Like a quarter of the Life magazine photographers went to my high school. Not at the same time or when I was there, years before I got there. But to have one would be something. To have like 8 photojournalists working for Life at one time. To me, that was unbelievable, because that's like the holy grail for someone like myself. That's what you want to do. That's what you want to be. And so you kind of strive for that sort of. But in my case, I started in photo labs. I got a job after school in a photo lab. And so from there on, I just seemed to go to a better photo lab, and eventually ending up in the Hollywood area. And actually very young, becoming I was the manager of the color lab at Columbia Studios. And that's a long story, but I was like about 20 years old, and I couldn't believe it. And so that's how my connection began, I think, with doing Hollywood photography or fan magazine. Some of the kind of grab photographs at premieres. And how that began is that I would process film for these working Hollywood photographers. And because they had studios and they would shoot the stars in their studios, it would be beneath them to show up on the red carpet behind a rope. But so they would give me their credentials, and I loved it. You know, you know, you're on the inside, outside. You're there, and you shoot on speculation. You just shoot a lot of stuff, and you send it to the fan magazines. And rarely do you sell anything, but when you did, you know, it's the money was not even the thought. I mean, just to have your name on a photo credit on something, it meant a lot. And anyway, with this first photograph here on Cesar Chavez and myself, when this is during the grape boycott, and I used to shoot for West magazine. That was a supplement with the LA Times, and they sent me out there to Delano for a while to hang around Cesar. And it's funny, one thing I never forget is that this was in '69. So first thing he told me was that he couldn't believe that somebody named Rodriguez would be coming from the LA Times, because that was a whole different time, you know. But in any case, the photo that you're looking at, originally when I saw it, I didn't like it at all. I thought I looked kind of goofy, but now obviously I love it, you know. And you can't see Caesar's dog, but he had two German Shepherds, and one of them is right behind him. His name was Boycott, and the other's name was Huelga, which means boycott in Spanish. So anyway,
So in this,
what I recall about those days, it's so hot and dusty, and for farm workers to be working in that kind of an atmosphere, I couldn't believe it. They were dressed like mummies, you know. I mean, just I was really impressed when, you know, how hard they worked.
so George, is that second camera in your left hand? Is that a film camera or a still camera?
Oh, that's a Hasselblad and a Pentax.
Okay.
Yeah, no, this is, like I said, in '69, and mainly, you know, I shot with film. So,
Well, we're going to go on to the next slide.
okay.
Oops. All right. There we go.
Yeah.
Who's
Well,
that lady?
Oh, that's Natalie Wood. This was at one of those Hollywood functions. It was a tribute to Jack Warner. I don't know why or whatever, but that's his arm. That's his arm beside Natalie Wood there. But I cropped him out. Yeah. At this time, you know, this is, I think people who associate these photographs with like being a paparazzi, but at this time, which would be around in the middle '60s, there's very few of us out there shooting these events. And we were very well behaved. It wasn't chaotic. And so that's why I seem to have caught her attention. She's looking right at me. She's beautiful.
It's an excellent shot. And we're going to see several more essentially portraits by you, which I think are sort of quintessentially beautiful portraits. So let me go to the next.
Yeah.
Oops, wrong next.
That's Curtis Mayfield. This is in his dressing room, and that lighting must be just a bare bulb. It was like in a jazz club, and he did the Superfly. He died very young, unfortunately.
And he seems very young in this photograph as well.
Yeah.
How,
you know,
do you know how old he might have been then?
No, I don't recall when that would have been, but Like I said, I just remember it was in a jazz club on Cahuenga in Hollywood. Um,
Oops. Oh, going backwards.
okay, that again, that's probably the premiere of Splendor in the Grass. I don't recall the year. It'd probably be around 65, 62. I don't know. But like I said, I used to shoot a lot of these events. And at one point, I thought that these two would be married or get married because they were always, always together at these events. And but no. Okay. This is at the Golden Globes in 1962. Obviously, it's Marilyn Monroe, and that's the man there is Jose Bolanos. He was her boyfriend at the time. He was, I think he was a screenwriter from Mexico. And I understand also that he was the last guy that she talked to.
Wow. So when you shot events like this, did you typically take rolls and rolls of shots, or
Well, you
how was
shoot,
that?
no, not a great deal, maybe 3 or 4 black and white rolls and some color, I suppose. But it all depended on the event and who was there. And sometimes you'd be in what they call the green room backstage, like for the Grammys or the Oscars. But then there's like a couple hundred other photographers beside you. So you're all getting the same thing. These kind of more, when you were able to wander around, like I say, they're just sitting there having dinner and drinks. It'd be more exclusive. But it all depended on where you were. If it was like a Grammys or the American Music Awards, yeah, you'd end up shooting like 15 rolls, half color, half black and white. And that's the thing that when people ask you who you shot, you know, it only matters if you have them in your studio. If you've shot, you know, people at the Grammys, again, everybody has that. So you don't feel like it's exclusive. Maybe at the parties later, you get something that no one else would have. But generally, everybody's getting the same thing. But these, I don't know how much I shot on Marilyn, but I think she was bigger than life after, you know, when she's no longer around. But although obviously she was beyond being a superstar, very beautiful. There, she's a bit tipsy. She's had a few drinks. Okay. Well, this is very special. You know, some things they don't mean anything till later on, and that's Jim Morrison, obviously, and the other guy is Van Morrison, and I was there to shoot an album cover on Van Morrison, and this is at the Whiskey A Go Go, probably 1966, and the last set, because the Doors were the house band at the Whiskey. One of them stayed on, the other one joined them. So this is, you know, extremely rare to have both Morrisons on the same stage together. It's very fortunate to be there at that time. But then again, when I shot this, the name was Van Morrison. The Doors hadn't even released an album yet. So, I mean, I knew they were a great band, but they hadn't been exposed. They haven't been out there yet. But you could tell, you know, some people you get a feeling about, and when you see them, it's just like Jim Morrison. You know, there's something going to happen there. It's just like I did the photographs on the first Jackson 5 album, the liner photos, and when they introduced them at the Forum in LA, and that first time I saw the Jackson 5 perform with Michael as the lead singer, you know, you're looking at something very special, and it's almost like they become big superstars immediately because of the talent that they have. but not always the case.
Well, what I like about this photograph is the sort of, it's an action shot,
Yeah.
and all the elements seem to work together to sort of draw your attention to the two main figures, Jim and Van Morrison. But you know, the orientation of the guitars, and I guess he might be the another guitarist in the background with his back to the camera, all sort of facing towards the center or facing front. So it makes it for a really well composed photograph.
Mm.
I wonder how, you know, how often did you come across, say, in you know, in a roll of film, a photograph that you felt had properly reflected the moment?
Well, like I say, on this particular shot, this group of photographs, I hadn't realized how important they would become till later. This kind of stuff, I mean, usually it's very busy, but occasionally you'll get a photo that you really like. But you know, stuff like this is very difficult unless, you know, you have exclusive reason to be somewhere. At this time, I used to be at the Whiskey Go Go a lot, so I could kind of come and go as I wanted. So I was very fortunate that way. I was able to shoot a lot of rock and rollers before they became real well known. I had a book. My book just came out, and well, 2 years ago, and very fortunate that one of the introductions is by John, oh, I can't think of his name, Densmore, the drummer with the Doors. So yeah, he wrote one of my introductions for my book. And the other person was Dolores Huerta, the co-founder of the United Farm Workers. So I'm very lucky.
And the book, for those of you who don't know, who are listening, the book is behind George's right shoulder. George Rodriguez, Double Vision, which is an excellent book, and we're grateful that we have a copy because they're very hard to get right at the moment. But it does do an excellent job of surveying your work. The text is very illuminating about George and the times. So I recommend that if you can find a copy, you should avail yourself and get it.
The first edition has been sold out, and they're going to come out with a second edition. And I think, you know, I never realized that I would have a book with the quality of the writing like that's in the book. I've always wanted to do a book, but fortunately I was connected with Josh Kuhn, that's a writer on the book, and that's, you know, more than half of the quality of the book. His writing makes it seem bigger than life. You know, I just figured I was kind of poo-pooing my way along, but maybe I was doing something, you know.
Yeah, I think you did something. You've made it all the way to Iowa.
Well, you know, like I say, I didn't realize that until the people that I idolized were people that had legitimate jobs. You know, whether you worked for the networks, ABC or NBC, or motion picture studios like Warner's, and those are the guys that I thought were real photographers. In fact, my best friend, he worked at NBC, and I would introduce him. This is my friend Gary Null. He's a real photographer. And I never meant it to be funny or anything, but later on, not too long ago, I overheard him talking to someone, and he said that he always respected me, you know, and I thought, well, that's weird, because I never felt that I was really doing anything, but I have to admit that I believe it now, because of when it all comes together in a book, then you have all these very special moments that you'd never, I mean, they just happened. Like around this time of shooting the Doors, Jim Morrison and this young gal that was his management at the time. I worked at Columbia, and I was the manager, so I could work on my own work after work, and so I'd stick around. So I recall Jim Morrison coming down, to where I was at Columbia in the basement, and we're looking at proof sheets, and it's not till later do you realize how special that is. And
you were not just photographing in LA. You've traveled across the country probably several times to take photographs, have you not?
Yeah, I did. More recently, they reunited the group called the Rascals, and so they used all my work that I had shot like 40 years ago to publicize the tour and to project onto the background. So they flew me to New York a couple of times, and that was a lot of fun. A great group, the Rascals. Okay, yeah, I've always liked this photo. It's not just kind of a nothing. I mean, it's just a grab shot. It's Jack Benny. When you show things like this, you and I know who Jack Benny is, but most people would not even know the name,
Well, I think that what's striking about it is clearly there's a lot of cigarette smoke in the space,
Exactly.
which
Yeah,
makes
yeah.
those light beams show up the way they do. And I think that's what makes the photograph really interesting.
Exactly. Yeah,
And
I never
then,
thought about
and
that.
yeah, and then there's enough clarity, say for instance, with the women who are in the center of the photograph, to see their expressions on their faces. And I think that adds a great deal to people's experience of it.
Yeah, you're right. I never thought about the cigarette smoke, but that's what it is. Nowadays they use those smoke machines if you want that effect. Okay, let's see. Oh, it's Jimmy. This is obviously Jimi Hendrix, and the guy behind him is Buddy Miles. And the Buddy Miles and the American flag, they were playing at the Whiskey, but he's a really good friend of Jimi Hendrix. So the rumor, circulates that Jimi Hendrix is going to play tonight. So that's how I would have, stuff like this. And again, it's at the Whiskey A Go-Go.
Now, did you, beyond sort of understanding that some of the people that you were photographing really had a presence, and you sensed that they would go further, were you starstruck? Did you, or were you removed, sort of with the camera between you and what you were photographing?
No, well, after a while, at the beginning you are, you're kind of awed by, but after a while, then everybody's, same as you are. I remember the first time I saw the Doors was at a club called the London Fog, which is like 2 doors over from the Whiskey A Go-Go. And, whether people believe me or not, I recall telling them, you guys got to record Light My Fire and The End. And I remember telling them that, but, you never know what's going to happen. One interesting thing is that, like, people ask you who, you were awed by or respected or were special. And one of them is Janice Joplin. And, but I have no photographs of Janice Joplin. But what happened was I was shooting the birds in a studio, and down the hall I could hear that voice, and I asked one of the birds, actually, is that Janice Joplin? And he said, yeah, do you want to meet her? So I said, oh man. So we walked down, and it's just her and an engineer, and then eventually just myself, the 3 of us. And I had my cameras because I was working, and I thought I got to go for it. So because I realized I'm not meant to be in this room. And so I asked her if she minded if I took a photograph. And she thought about it, and then she says, not now, honey. So I was disappointed, but you got to respect people, especially when you don't belong there. So then shortly I've left, and then the thing is, she came over to where the Byrds were recording, and at that time I could have taken the photograph, and maybe I should have, but I didn't. I just had to respect what she said. And then later on, somebody told me that she wasn't real comfortable with herself, with how she looked, I thought she looked great. She had all the feathers and everything.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah, this is, Terry Melcher and Roger Mcquinn. Terry Melcher was a record producer. I think he worked with the Beach Boys for a while. And of course, Roger Mcquinn, is bigger than life. He's lead singer with the Byrds.
So would this have been the same time that you ran into?
No, this would have, for me to be there. I was shooting for the Byrds, so that's why I was there. That's people that whenever I have exhibits and they see the variety of my stuff, like Michael Jackson, Jimi Hendrix, Eazy-E of NWA, if you're just kind of a regular person, you don't realize, why does this guy have so much stuff? They think that you're having to walk in on the right place, but it isn't that. It's just assignments. You get assignments to do things, and after you've been around for a while, it's in the recording industry. I don't know how it is now, but at that time, it's kind of a network of people that all know each other. And if you need whatever you need, and if you need a photographer, well, you call George. That's how that works. It's a word of mouth. But then I guess you have to be talented or respected and be responsible.
Well, and I think what distinguishes a professional photographer is that you're always prepared, that you have your equipment ready and you're ready to go when somebody offers you the opportunity.
Well, yeah, you always have your cameras. I always have my camera. It's just a part of you. I always have a couple of cameras in my car. Yeah. Okay. Well, this is taken in 1970 by a group. Well, I mean, they I don't know if you call it graffiti or what, but the Chicano Liberation Front, they posted this. It's taken from a saying that Emiliano Zapata said. He was like a revolutionary in Mexico. It is better to live one day on your feet than 100 years on your knees, something like that. But anyway, this guy, Zach de la Rocha, he's the leader with Rage Against the Machine. It's a group. He bought this photograph and then he named his next group One Day as a Lion because of this photograph. And
cool.
And now online, I see so many photographs that use that phrase, one day as a lion. I don't know if it's because of this or it just sounds good or it's catchy or whatever, but it's amazing, things take off.
It's gone viral.
Yeah. The WFs, that's a whole different thing. That's a gang. And okay, what's next? Well, this, at one time I thought the book that I would do would be like on the Mexican-American experience. So every day I was out there looking for stuff, or when I would drive home, I'd drive through East LA and just to see what I could see. And this is one of them times, this is 1970. So this guy is obviously coming home from the war. And at one point, I didn't know whether he's coming or going. But I figured that he's coming home because if he was going, somebody would have given him a ride. And so, yeah, so I love this photograph because it's something that you're always looking for that you don't always come up on.
There's a photograph by the photographer Gary Winogrand, who he made about the same time, of a sailor walking down the street, coming home, in this instance, I believe, too, all by himself. And it's one of those moments, again, when I think about photographers just being prepared to catch a moment like this. And I think this is an incredibly beautiful photograph, and I would like to see at some point this photograph and the Gary Winogrand photograph together. Two different photographers with completely different philosophies about photographing, but ultimately there's a great deal of synergy and sympathy that your photograph has and Winogrand's photograph has. So I think it's just fantastic.
There was a documentary called Chicanos in Vietnam, and this was used as a signature piece. I think it was a PBS film. So they used that. It's been used a few times. And the very last photograph, it's a series of pictures. And the last photographs, he's looking right at me. So obviously that wouldn't work. But so can we go back to that other one?
Let me see if I can get back there. There we go.
Yeah. But this photograph here, especially more recently, because of all that's happening, you know, especially in the U.S. right now. In fact, this was on the cover of the LA Times a week ago, because they did a huge write-up on the moratorium. This is 50 years ago. And it seems I say busy now just because I seem to be the source for other people. So I've had so many requests to use this photograph. In fact, it's pretty weird. This gal that's in Seoul, Korea, she contacted me, and she's from Germany. She's a German journalist, but she's stationed in Seoul, Korea. And they wanted to use this photograph in Japan because Japan has a big Chicano subculture. They're all Japanese, but they love the Chicano subculture, and they live that life. Yeah, this photograph, you know, it's good. And there's good things, and I see this online often, but they have no right to have it or to use it or to put their not photo credit, but it's like they own it. That's the only drawback to the internet. But I knew at one time I was extremely protective of my work, especially before the book came out, because I wanted to be original and exclusive. But I knew that once the book is out, then everything's up for grabs, you know. It's too bad that that attitude is out there. Not by everyone, you know, by legitimate agencies and organizations. They'll contact you and pay you for it. But other people don't. But, you know, it's life.
Well,
You get used to it.
We're really happy to have this image in the show, and of course your name is right there with it, and it does resonate today because of Black Lives Matter marches and the pandemic and everything that's going on. And Los Angeles has always been, it seems, an epicenter for social movements and people gathering together for change.
Yeah.
So I think that's what's wonderful about this image, and in a way, this doesn't excuse it, but people see the power and the strength of the image, and that's why they're stealing it from you.
You know,
Yeah.
that particular day was a turning point for the movement, and I shot a lot of stuff. I have so much on the moratorium right now that you know, I think it'd be interesting maybe to do a book only on that. And I walked the march with a guy named Sal Castro, that is like a name in activists, especially in Chicano culture. But I remember leaving him because I wanted to get an overall shot. So I went in a hotel and went up on the roof to take this photograph. So I'm glad that I did that.
Well, it's great. It's a great photograph.
Thank you.
And here's another excellent photograph.
Yeah, this was the day after Robert Kennedy passed away. They had a requiem procession in East Los Angeles that went from Belvedere Park to East Los Angeles College. And, it's just I mean, like I say, he had just died. And so all these people showed up. It was very moving. You mentioned LA. One thing I realize I'm so fortunate to have been born and raised here in Los Angeles because it makes it easier to do what I do, especially here because of the entertainment industries. So I really appreciate that. My parents came here in 1935 on their honeymoon from Texas, from Houston and San Antonio, and they decided to stay. And I was so fortunate, like I say, to be born here. If you can't make it here, you can't really make it anywhere. There's so much of an audience out there. Yeah.
This is another image, of course, that resonates with today. And no offense to anybody out there who might,
Well, these are
be concerned about that.
Yeah. These were the walkouts at the high schools here. The kids walked out of school because they weren't getting an education. And, I know this is, so they had the walkouts and all these placards. And I don't know what they could do, but they were just upset about it. And I guess this is all they could do. But it was, you're talking about police brutality now. At this time, there's a line in the Buffalo Springfield song, "What a field day for the heat." That's the way it was because these are just high school kids. The LAPD had their helmets on and batons, and it wasn't. It's never that necessary to hit somebody. At least they didn't kill anyone. This is another photo that's very popular now. This girl, her name is Hilda Reyes. She's like, I believe she was 15 years old at this time. And this image has gotten a lot of mileage, not necessarily by myself, but this is one that people like to use. And this was, around 1967, I believe, or 68. It was at an event called Fiesta de los Barrios at Lincoln High School. And she's a group of brown berets that these women eventually started their own group called Las Adelitas. And they're also very popular today. I mean, their legend, their story is very popular.
Well, it's a very powerful image, and and a lot of its power, of course, comes from the young woman. But the placards behind her too, I think, add to the strength of the photograph. Mm. I think it's if you had a greatest hits, this is your greatest hits.
Yeah. Plus, like I said, these are the 60s. It took a lot of guts for young people to get out there and put themselves in harm's way. So I think that's why they're so idolized now.
Is this a self-portrait of you, really? Is this your shadow?
It is.
Yeah.
It is, and I probably, I don't know what, not retouched, but probably try to subdue that somehow. So you saw the shadow, huh? Yeah.
Well, I think again, I think it's great, and it's a part of a tradition of photographers who intentionally incorporate their shadow into the
Well,
work that they're doing.
it never entered my mind. You know, I tried to, I would hope people wouldn't notice it, you know. But recently I came across a photograph of a girl carrying that sign. Real typical, you know, hippie type of long-haired girl from the 60s. And she's holding that sign in another photograph. I'm glad she dropped it there, or left it there. Well, this is one of my favorite photographs. You know, if I hadn't taken it, I would love this photo. I remember the time I spent with him. I just had to shoot around him because he's real busy. He's like he always had like a dozen people around him, you know, asking questions and so on. And the Kennedy banner is there because Robert Kennedy had been killed. I think about just a few months. Well, this is in '69, so it would have been I don't know, around less than a year, and the banners were still up there. And Kennedy had visited with him, and I read once in a magazine article that Robert Kennedy had told someone that he decided to run because of the conversation he had with Cesar Chavez. You know, I don't know to what extent that's true, but anyway, you know, one thing for me, like you hear people, and then eventually I got to meet Cesar Chavez, and we didn't become buddies, but I was probably around him a dozen times in my life. And but at a point like this, you do the best you can because you realize how important this individual is, and so that's why, you know, you really want to do the best you can.
This, I think, would also is one of those photographs that sort of has to be the, you know, up at the top of your body of work. It's a beautiful portrait.
Well, I've been told that it's the iconic photograph of Cesar Chavez. That makes me feel good. And this, the one here, that just is ready-made. That speaks for itself, you know, that Los Elegantes.
It's also a great, you know, he's not Caesar, but it's a great image of a person. That's a great deal. Says a great deal about him.
You know, these people, they don't even realize it. You know, they don't realize who they are. You know, and they're doing their life. You know, it's like farm workers. Sometimes when I'd have exhibit on farm workers, some of them would show up and they'd be in the photographs. You know, and that would really get to me because for most people, it's a movement and it's historical. But to know the names of these nobodies in the photograph, you know, because you were there, that was you, you know, and that's when it really gets to me, you know, that you don't expect that. And some of the farm worker photos, people get, you know, kind of teary-eyed because they I think it reminds them of the life they had, you know, and yeah. Anyway. This I worked on a show called America. We went, this is in 1971, I think. And this film crew went across the country to get the feel of America at that time. And then they needed photographs to fill in their story. So they told me to just go out and shoot people. And so I found these two kids. This is in downtown LA, and they're shining shoes. They have these shine things. There were shining shoes downtown, and they also had a football. But I must have given them a couple of dollars just so I could take their photograph. And yeah, I like this also. There's really like no reason for this except that it makes for a good photograph, I think.
It is a great photograph.
Yeah, it makes people think, what's going on. And this is in Oak Alley, Louisiana, and this it's a real plantation back there. But this is also, I guess, in around 71, and this man, he worked for the foreman. He's a great guy. I mean, he's so I don't know, so humble. I mean, you just he made me a bit nervous. Not nervous, but I just wanted him to stop being so subservient. I mean, just everything was yes sir, no sir, yes sir, and no. Ooh, that it made me feel bad for him.
Was this a part of that America trip, that series?
Yeah, no,
this photograph.
Right. This is again on it wasn't a part of a TV show, but I was there for working on a show, and I just happened to see this guy standing in that field, and yeah, I love this photo also. Well, and again, this is something that you see, and you got to stop and take a picture. When I saw the Piece for Christmas, this guy wasn't there, but then while I'm taking pictures, I guess he walked up, and so if you treat people fairly with respect, then they're very accommodating, and so I asked him if I could take a picture of him by the sign, and he said okay. And then we talked for a bit, and actually you can't tell because it's black and white, but the piece has been crossed out by someone. And then one of the other pictures that is very powerful is him facing the sign, and on the back of his head he's got a gang name, but I like this one better. In fact, this was my Christmas card.
Excellent.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know what to say about this. I really love this also. That is Thalia. She's huge in Mexico, and I guess she's known here also. The actress is Thalia, and this is they had a press conference at Chasen's restaurant in Hollywood, and this is like the green room. This is the office of the owner. So it's just kind of a slice of Hollywood, and, so it's another photograph I really like.
Now, is she deliberately looking at you, or did you catch her sort of just looking?
She's just looking at me. I mean, I wasn't talking to her at all. She just happened to be glancing at me, and so like I say, she at that time and since is just a big superstar in Mexico. Have you ever heard of Thalia? The name Thalia? That's her name. That's who she is. Well, this is Magic Johnson, and this is like I forget the year, but it's in the 70s, and then like 30 years later, he becomes part owner of the Dodgers. But at this time, he's just visiting there. This is at the height of Fernando Mania, Fernando Valenzuela. That was like his rookie year, and he's very, very popular. Okay, and that's my brother and the Jackson 5. Actually, there were 6 of them, 6 brothers, and they're all playing basketball with my brother. And he would often go with me to help me. So, yeah, and at this time, again, it's when the Jackson 5 just got here from Indiana. That's in Encino that I think has since become the family compound where the mom lives. Okay. Oh, this is the NWA. I mean, they're obviously they're just to me they're like the Beatles of rap. They're the ones that started rap as we know it, or actually knew it. Maybe it's not as maybe it's changed. I don't know, but these guys are from Compton, and I think they used to love to come to my studio because I had I rented in a building that was owned by Bob Hope, and they used it to rehearse because they had a big rehearsal hall, but they also had a little theater. So people that are shooting, there's a piano and they could dance and rehearse, and it's just sort of a perk for them. But what that's Easy on the left. He obviously, he's not around anymore. He died very young, but it always struck me interesting that before they came to my studio, they would go by Taco Bell and just spread all the stuff out. I guess they knew they could relax and be themselves.
That's a good thing.
But who would have known? I mean, these they became huge, especially Dr. Dre. Dr. Dre, I think, what was it, a couple of years ago, gave $100 million to USC. I would never have thought that way back then. Yeah. Again, this is a time when you do the best you can because these people are huge. I mean, they're Easy died very young. I'm a G-man because Easy said I was G-man. So it makes me proud. Yeah, he died, I forget how young he was, but very young. But he's one that started NWA.
Yeah, in the 90s, he unfortunately died of AIDS.
He did.
But
yeah.
the photographs that you've taken of him clearly show that you have a rapport, and that's not always the case when you repeatedly photograph somebody. But clearly, you have a rapport with him as a subject.
Well, I hope so because it would really matter to me that I was not seen in an ill light by these guys, because I know, when I heard Easy gave me like 4 cassettes after I threw shooting, and when I played one in my car, I couldn't believe it. I mean, I couldn't believe that somebody understood the lifestyle as well. Well, why not, of South Central LA. Dr. Dre went to my high school. I went to Fremont High School, and he went to Fremont. It's so, you can't even imagine like being around a group like that, or being around like Soul Train dancers. Their dialogue is so rich, and you learn so much, and you feel privileged to be accepted in those circles. I mean, you're not a part of it, but you're sort of on the inside, outside. So yeah, no, I'm so glad I have that. That's it's Ruben Navarro. He's known as a Maravilla kid. Maravilla is a neighborhood in East LA, and there he's obviously making the sign of the cross. It's very common for Mexican boxer.
So beautiful. I think this is our last image, but I think what I've been able to sort of glean from the images that were selected was that you have a particular skill, a particular gift for portraits. And I suspect that it comes from your ability to establish a rapport with your subjects.
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. You know, the greatest photographer that did portraits was the guy from Canada. What's his name?
Yusuf Karsh?
Joseph Karsh, yeah.
Yusuf Karsh, yeah.
He came to LA one time, and I knew the guy that made his strobe, so I got to help him. And he's incredible, Joseph Karsh. He's like the portrait photographer. So I was glad to be able to meet him, and he gave me one of his books. But, you know, he only shot like 3 or 4 exposures at a sitting, but he shot 8x10 and 5x7 formats. So that's why, you know, his work is so incredible, so great, the detail. Yeah, I like portraits. There was a time when I had studios in Burbank, and I must have shot a portrait sitting 1 or 2 every day, because the Valley is just full of workshops and those students, those actors and actresses, they always need headshots, so they keep you busy. And it's funny that for some of them that they hire you to shoot headshots, and the fact it's like they're already making it, you know, because they're getting headshots done, but not really, because they're paying me to shoot them. But that's another thing, is that you know, Hollywood is, it's like a state of mind, you know. The city of Hollywood is not anything that people would realize is Hollywood. I think more the studios are actually out in the valley, out in San Fernando Valley now. So it's very different now, especially now.
So for any of you who have questions, feel free to submit them via the chat function on Zoom, and feel free to reach out to us if you would like to ask George some questions. Otherwise, we thank you for joining us tonight, and we thank George, of course, for coming all this way to be with us, and putting up with the heat in of his journey.
You know, we're coming to you from the Whittier Art Gallery in Whittier, California. And I'm so grateful for the people that run this place that helped me, like David Bailey and Javier and Vicky Schramm. Without them, we wouldn't, you know, have the nice image that we have. I'm really grateful for them. Also, this is we're still on or no?
We're still on, yes.
Oh, okay. I just want to say that this is a great little gallery. It's been here over 80 years, and at one time Rockwell showed here. Norman Rockwell exhibited here, and also Ida O'Keefe, Georgia O'Keefe's sister, was on the board here, and she's
Cool.
quite an active member here. So it's great
Excellent.
for me to have this connection.
There's some wonderful photographs behind you, George. Some of the people, some we've discussed, and a few others. Is there any? You know, obviously you selected or somebody selected for you works that they thought were wonderful representations of what you do. Is there anyone there that you would like to talk about? The Linda Ronstadt or the?
Well, she won a Grammy there for Canciones de Mi Padre. No, there's a picture there of Michael. He's about 11 years old. Oh, and the picture of Jerry Query, the fighter, the boxer. That's on the cover of West Magazine. And it's also on his tombstone. The family said, I've never seen it, and they're supposed to send me a photo. They never did. So I'll have to go down there. He's somewhere outside of Bakersfield.
Okay.
If I
Anyway,
can jump in for a second.
what I'm going to have to do, if ever we do something like this again, is actually concentrate on going through the photographs that I really like myself, you know, and that'd be fun. Yeah.
All right, that's your next project, to dig into your archive and create a whole new exhibition.
Well, I've got 3 or 4 of them. I don't know, I don't know, really what I'd like to do next. I know maybe I should do a book on just the Chicano culture by itself, and there's so much. I'm gathering stuff. I don't know why, just on my own with all this anti-police, thought going on, that I have a lot of photography over the years of police in different situations, and I'm just getting them together. I don't know. I may have a request for that.
Well, it's fascinating. Certainly, we've seen only a small portion of what you've done. I do think that Melissa has some questions or lined up to share.
We do. First, I wanted to say thank you so much, George. And we have a couple notes here of thanks coming from different people. So please know how much our audience has appreciated your program. The first question that we have here is if you could get into more specifics about why you use black and white over color film in your photography.
Oh, black and white. Well, it's more dramatic. I don't know, when you used to work, it's funny, when I began, you just shot black and white, only black and white. And then when you were working, you'd be shooting both black and white and transparency film, like Ektachrome, Kodachrome preferably.